Hello, my name is Caroline from Intersoft Systems, the company behind the market-leading software FinPower Connect. Today we're introducing a recently integrated banking interface product for New Zealand called Zepto. We first introduced Zepto for the Australian market back in 2021, so we're excited to be bringing Zepto to FinPower Connect for New Zealand clients. So, what is Zepto? FinPower Connect has always supported exporting and importing of banking transactions via a file-based interface. For example, to send a bank transaction to be processed by the banking system, a file is generated by FinPower Connect and then manually imported into your banking application for direct debits and direct credits. We now support Zepto, a web-based API banking interface and the first service of its kind to be integrated with FinPower Connect. There are many advantages of web-based APIs over a file-based interface. These include speed, e.g. direct credit payments in Zepto can occur very quickly, and ease of use. For example, sending a loan advance payout straight away instead of waiting for the next time the bank files are exported and uploaded to the bank. They also provide the ability to track the transaction, updating its status, noting when it succeeds or fails. To use the new banking interface and associated Zepto service, you need to be licensed for advanced banking and preferably also web services and automation, so you can take advantage of the webhook callback functionality that provides real-time transaction feedback. For more information on this, you can contact your Intersoft dealer. We already have a comprehensive setup guide already available for you. So let's have a look at how it all works in FinPower Connect. Noting that today we're using a sandbox environment to display how the transactions will appear when they succeed or fail, etc. We'll start with the end result and work a bit backwards. And what I mean by that is we're going to be jumping straight into showcasing how regular loan instalments could be processed in FinPower Connect. Previously, you needed to process your direct debits and then export a file to be uploaded to the bank to then make the real-world transactions happen. With Zepto, it's so much simpler. Because of the integrated API, as soon as you've run the Process Direct Debit wizard, all your regular payments are processed right then and there. From there, Zepto handles the rest and reports back with the transaction results or a status. So if we look at our Process Direct Debits wizard, which is located in the transaction menu, and make sure the correct bank account is selected, as some lenders have more than one bank account if they're operating in a multi-entity database. Then we confirm the dates for the payments and processing are correct, which should be today's date, and click Next. Here on our filters page, we can define the Zepto payment method for direct debits and click Next. We are now presented with a list of payments ready to be processed. What we should see here are a list of the payments due today for each and every account with Zepto set up as their payment method. We will also see any direct debits that were not processed prior, if applicable, and any that are due to be retried if they failed the day before. There is a setting on the bank account to control when those payments are retried. Once we're ready, all we then need to do is click Finish to process these payments. We then receive a message to say that the transactions have been sent for processing, and it's that simple. For our regular interest payouts or scheduled maturity payouts created by account processors, we simply need to run the Export Bank Transactions wizard using the API option. Zepto will appear in the list, but only if there are transactions waiting to be processed. Here, all we need to do is click Next, review the list, and click Finish. And again, we will get the notification that the transactions have been processed. We can do the same again for the processing of interest payouts to our deposit accounts not automatically created by the account processors by simply running through the wizard, selecting Zepto Direct Credit as our payment method, clicking Next, reviewing our list, and again clicking finish, and away they go. The next question is, of course, how do we know those payments were successful? Normally we'd need to receive notification from the bank or banks in question and import dishonor files if the payments were rejected. Zepto goes further and faster than this process. We're able to receive real-time updates, receiving the transaction status changes as soon as Zepto do. So what does that look like in FinPower Connect? Well, there are two ways we can receive the return messages from Zepto via their API. The first is via webhooks. With webhook callback set up, there is nothing you need to do in FinPower Connect specifically to get the updated information. Yes, that's right, nothing. The transactions are automatically updated once their status changes, and we'll show you some of the potential statuses shortly. The other, if you don't have webhooks because you're not licensed for web services and automation, is the pending service request wizard. The wizard is located in the process menu and is used to retrieve status updates from a variety of integrated services, Zepto included. So you'd simply select Zepto for your service ID, click Next, and any transactions awaiting update would be listed here. There are none in this list currently as this database is set up with webhooks already. Looking further at payment or transaction statuses, I have a few I would like to show you. So first I'll show you how easy it is to approve a disbursement payout using Zepto. So looking at this account's disbursement page, this account was opened today and set to be paid out via direct credit to an account using Zepto. All we need to do is approve the disbursement. Click yes, and it's gone. We can see here that it's queued and waiting for the Zepto response confirming the transaction has been processed successfully. The second is an example of the same kind of transaction, Zepto being used to pay out a disbursement on a loan, but fully processed. We click on our disbursement here, we can see in the summary that the status is showing as success. This very same loan we processed a loan repayment for earlier today. So if we navigate to the transaction page, we can see how our transaction is doing. As you can see here, it's still showing a status of queued. And the updates will come through here as they are received. First things first, we can see in the cleared column that there is a transaction that's already been updated by Zepto, which is great. If we click the View Bank Transaction button, we can see a further breakdown. We can immediately see a nice green success status, which means the transaction has been fully processed at both ends, Zepto and the client's bank account. It's important to note that the response times on transactions are still somewhat dependent on bank response times to Zepto. As banking progresses further in New Zealand, this process will only get faster. Looking closer at this transaction under the service log section, we can see our little process. This log here being when we sent the payment request out, and the subsequent log being the response that has come back to us via the webhook callback to confirm the transaction is cleared. For the technically able administrator users, these logs are also where you can find more information on the API calls and responses should that be required. So what happens when a transaction is rejected? Zepto have multiple payment statuses, each with different response meanings, and these will flow through to FinPower Connect. For example, here we can see a transaction for $1.54. In this instance, we can see the transaction has been reversed and has an additional note stating account blocked. This means that it was rejected at the client's bank end, where the client has specifically denied access by cancelling a direct debit authority. Thankfully, not something that should happen very often, but it's good to know about all the same. Again, if we click View Bank Transaction, it will give us more details if required. The status clearly shows in red that it has failed, and the service log area again gives us the account blocked message. Likewise, if we view the full service log for another transaction that I prepared earlier, we can see we have an overall status of failed. You can see the Zepto response had a status of returned, and we have a status message under the service log of insufficient funds. If we navigate to this account using the hyperlink, we can again see the reason for the failure as noted in the notes column. Insufficient funds. Very clearly and easily states the reason for the failure. So the next question becomes clear. If the transactions are updated automatically, how is the lender notified of the failures? Each failed transaction has the option of having a log added, with a task flagged for review in Task Manager. These are delegated to a role, so any user in that designated role will see these in Task Manager and ready to act on. If we have a look at Task Manager, I'll show you what I mean. Here we can see multiple logs set with high severity and delegated to a role of C, which in this database is a collector role. What the user does from this point is, of course, completely up to their own processes and procedures, but all they need to do to clear this task from Task Manager from a FinPower Connect point of view is click the Complete button. Bolts on the bulk processing side of things, and now we need to look at how we get the direct debits going with Zepto. It's important to note that in order to use Zepto, similar to any direct debit authority, there are some steps external to FinPower Connect that you must do in order to confirm your due diligence has been completed. For this, we will refer to it as Know Your Customer, and it covers things like making sure the right declarations have been made and checks have been completed, like confirmation that the person is the account holder and they are who they say they are as part of your responsibilities under your license agreements, and of course the various anti-money laundering and fraud prevention rules and regulations. For this, as you add the borrower's payment details, FinPower Connect will ask you to confirm that this has been completed. So if we change this account's payment details, for example, we'll see this confirmation as follows. First, we need to ensure that the fields are filled in, including an email and phone number. And then we click the Add button here next to the Contact ID field. If a Zepto contact already exists for this bank account, name, email and phone number, the existing agreement information will be returned. Once we click Next, we receive the message requesting confirmation that the direct debit request service agreement, sometimes known as the Know Your Customer, due diligence has been completed, to which the user must confirm yes, and it's done and ready to go. Now we're able to take payments from this account, and the regular instalments will be automatically debited as we saw in action earlier. Ad hoc payments can also be taken at any time. So, for example, if a client called and wanted to make a lump sum reduction on their account, all we'd need to do is click the Payment Received button, enter the transaction details, select our Zepto payment method, click Finish, and the transaction is sent straight away. If we have a look at our transactions page, we can see again that this payment has been queued and awaits an update from Zepto. It's important to note that when you're adding an account for a deposit account to enable direct crediting an investor, for example, the same direct debit request question does not appear. This is acceptable as there's no requirement for an authority to send a credit transaction to a bank account. So as you can see here on this deposit account, If we go through the same process, change our payment method to Zepto, fill in the contact details, click the add button, the contact ID is returned and no additional message pops up. Then you can click finish and that's all done. We'll very briefly cover the configuration areas now. As I mentioned earlier, we do have a comprehensive document available for when you're setting things up, and it's actually very straightforward. The Zepto platform itself is simple and easy to follow, and the only areas for configuration in FinPower Connect are the cost centre and the bank account. In the cost centre, all you have to do is paste your API key into the credentials tab. Ensure you've got Use Service ticked up the top here, and on the Options page, ticking the Enable Bank Interface. Down here is a suggested webhook URL where you have your web services URL followed by the standard makeup for the API callback for Zepto. Next is the bank account configuration. Once the banking interface has been enabled, a Zepto specific page becomes available. This is where you select your Zepto bank account. If you click the refresh button here, a list will be supplied with the available accounts in Zepto. As I touched on earlier, you can have multiple entities and multiple bank accounts within a database, and this is how you would separate them out by repeating this process on another FinPower Connect bank account record and selecting different Zepto bank accounts. The next section here covers off where you can set whether or not to log failures and with what severity, and which role to delegate the logs to. Like any payment service, Zepto also needs to be linked to relevant payment methods in order to be used. As you can see here, I've added one for direct debits and one for direct credits. If we review the settings, we can see this is where some additional preferences can be set, like choosing whether or not to process a payment straight away or whether to process at a specific time of the day, and what to set the reschedule or retry settings to. You'll also notice the payment methods are linked to an export service of lodgement. This is an optional extra for those wanting to group Zepto transactions together for accounting purposes, flowing through to the general ledger. To facilitate that, all you need to do is run the bank account lodgement process from the transaction menu. Once this is complete, the next time the general ledger is exported, the transactions will be grouped together accordingly. Finally, if we look back at our transaction we processed before, or one from earlier, we may already see that an update has come back through. Like our disbursement earlier, this has already come through as cleared. Again, the speed of the update is dependent on the other external services involved in the transaction, and this will only get faster as time progresses and our banking system in New Zealand continues to advance towards real-time, near-instant transacting. We have a quick look here though. This was pretty quick, or within about 6 minutes or so. For more information on the Zepto integration, please feel free to contact application support for the configuration guide, or your Intersoft dealer for more information, or of course making contact with Zepto directly.